Hi everyone. So we have been listening to a lot of AI shenanigans in social media or in other media channels, and being someone who has worked with automation and who has regular interactions with it, I thought that it will be a prime time to share my understanding, my perspective, and maybe advocate for it as well, and give everyone a basic understanding of it. And I want to make some statements clear that I have in case of Bangladesh automation and AI field or developing field. So let's dive into it and let's see what we can do with it. And this will be my first video, so I'm not hoping much, but same as you. Okay, please don't hope the world from it. Okay, so let's dive into it. First of all, let's try to understand what automation actually is. You get an email, and let's say it would be cool if you could just like summarize it with an AI just the moment it got into your mail. That would be cool, right? So that's automation, and that's a very simple automation. So if we just get into the core shenanigans of what the definition says, the core concept of automation is the deployment of technology to execute processes or tasks without continuous human assistance. So, first of all, the whole process has to be completed through technology. A human like you and me, we can't interfere in the middle parts. But another thing is there can be approval or decline processes here. We can have some automations that has human input in it, like a human can start it, a human can have some approvals or some decline processes in the middle, but most of the process has to be reliant on technology. Automation reliably handles repetitive or complex actions. What is repetitive action? A repetitive action can be that, let's say, what do you every single night you track your expenses. That can be a repetitive task, and that can be automated through various tools. What is a complex action? A complex action can be, let's say, it might be a very vague example, but let's say a ship comes into our Chattogram port. Okay, and the ship has to first anchor, and there are many human complexities, and it has to anchor in a certain port, and the anchoring part, maybe it has 5 to 10 steps in it, and it might be very complex process. But what automation really will do is, it can be a robot that automates it, it can be a program that automates it. But let's say the ship's captain will say, okay, it's time to board the port. So he or she will like press a button, and there will be a robot or some tool like that which will take the whole process into itself, and it will steer the ship into the port and successfully anchor it. Okay, now another note that I need to notify you with is that no kind of automation will always have 100% success rate. So more than 80% or 90% success rate is quite okay-ish. And there will be times when you will face that yes, your automation has failed, so you will have to go back and there are some technical difficulties, but yes, 80% to 90% times being okay is acceptable. Then it is crucial because it significantly enhances productivity, reduces operational cost, allows human workers to focus on innovation and decision making. Two things that humans are always better than AI or robots. Okay, because innovation is not machine learning. Innovation is thinking out of the box, which most of the robots will never be able to do. And when they can do it, it's another concept which is called singularity. You can search it up. So this was the core concept of automation. So let's try to understand the myths behind it. The most excruciating pain that we feel is the myth that people will lose their job. Okay, now the fact is automation rarely leads to absolute job loss. Instead, it causes job transformation. Okay, while repetitive tasks are automated, new roles focusing on managing, maintaining and innovating with automation tools are created. The future of work emphasizes augmentation. It kind of relates with augmented reality. Okay, augmentation where AI tools assist humans, requiring upskilling in areas like data analysis and critical thinking. Okay, so hard facts first. Most people who are engaged in labor intensive work will lose their job. Hard fact. Okay, unless they are paid so bare minimum that a robot's electricity cost is higher than their wage. Okay, those people will not lose their jobs. Now there are people in the whole economic system, high paid people who are let's say middle paid, and people who are low paid. And then there is people who are living day to day. There is a chance that the third category will lose their job. Okay, not the high the lowest category of people, lowest category of income people, but the highest category are mostly managers and CEOs, CFOs, etc. They know that they're safe. Okay, that's why they're implementing AI and automation. And mid category people might lose their jobs, but definitely the people who are in the third section, who are not very low in wages and not very high in case of managerial tasks, they might lose their jobs. Why? Because let's go here. Okay, tasks that are highly routine or repetitive roles. What can these tasks be? Data entry and processing clerks. There are many companies right now who collect market data, and there are various people who then process this data. Like let's say there are NGOs in Bangladesh that have field officers who has to go to various projects and collect data, like how many people went to the project today, how many people got engaged with the project today, and then they have to process that information to their higher ups, and it's a very tedious process. And in most cases they have a intern do it, or a very average paying person do that work. Okay, or else sometimes the manager has to do it himself, which is a headache for him. So these kind of tasks are dealt with using automation, or like AI driven automation. Then there is assembly line manufacturing and packaging workers. This is the most important part. Okay, companies like FedEx and Amazon, they have huge manufacturing plants and other storing facilities, which once upon a time had a lot of people working there, managing the packages, and uh, ensuring that the package that needs to be in a certain block is in the certain block. But now most of these companies are reliant on robots and machines, like this one, this photo. They kinda rely on robots to automate that process. Okay, so people who used to work there currently don't have their jobs. Okay, and then we have telemarketing and simple customer service agents. Most of the time, if you are using, let's say, banks like Bragg Bank or Citibank, whenever you call their customer service office, you'll get to see that there's a automated voice which says, to get the customer service, dial 0; to get this kind of service, dial 1. So there was a time when you had to call someone, and then they would transfer your call to another department, and that doesn't exist anymore. Now this is the current situation. The future situation will be that there will be certain AIs that are trained with previous data that are now in this moment being collected, to train those AIs so that they can better serve the customers with lower cost. Okay, so these kind of works are currently will be replaced with AI. There's no doubt in that. Okay, now on the flip side, fields that are not very replaceable with AI but can benefit from AI exist. So these fields are AI and robotics engineering, the people who are making the robots. Of course they will benefit from it. Data science and analysis professionals, they will benefit from it. Automation, maintenance and repair, of course you have to repair it. Someone made it and someone will repair it. They're like the same kind of person won't do the two things. Okay, there's a cost factor here. Okay, the person who can make an AI will charge you way more than someone who can fix it. Okay, and then there's human centric skills like creativity. Of course you can say that there are arts that are being created with AI, but people who genuinely love art are not going that way. Believe me, they are not going that way. Okay, then complex problem solving. This kind of complex problem solving is not like how many years will it take for the sun to crash into our earth. That's not complex problem solving. Complex problem solving in this matter is that what will happen if tomorrow a blind person is trialed for accidental murder. What will happen in that case? These are emotional problems that have humanity connected to them. So there are other problems like that which needs the core humanity to judge their implementation. And then we have emotional intelligence. Professions like psychiatrist or like psychology professionals, these kind of roles. And in case of HR, there are consultants who will not be replaced because of their humanity. Okay, like humanity itself will one day be like a skill in itself. Like how human you are will definitely determine how well paid you will be. Okay, so after that, what do we have? We have a case study. Okay, the case study might seem a bit irrelevant, but let's connect the dots. Okay, we will take a look into Japan's lost decade. Okay, those of you who don't know, in 1990 the Japanese asset market, it was kind of like a bubble that was, growing and growing, and at a certain point of time it just, crashed down. And at that time Japan, lost millions of dollars in the market, and it was a dark age for them. And the economy could not grow, there was zero growth, and the deflation, the inverse for inflation was ever high. So imagine tomorrow the dollar prices went high above your capability. That is called deflation. Okay, so the main drivers included over leveraged corporations and banks and demographic challenges. So it was a dark age for them. And I have mentioned three policies that they took to kind of fight it. Okay, and we will try to connect it where where it fits into our today's conversation. First of all, one thing you will have to understand is that the moment you apply automation into your country as well as into your economy, there will be people, 100% there will be people who will be negatively affected by that. And it will be your public policy that will shape their way of seeing your development. There will be fresh graduates who will get out of their university and will see that they have billions of jobs waiting for them. And at the certain time there will be 30 or 40-year-old professionals who will lose their jobs. Okay, and you will have to make the system so that those 40-year-olds have the capacity to support their family, support themselves. And there will be a lost decade for us. No matter what you do, it's inevitable. So you will have to take the challenge to implement the policies to fight that. So let's try to understand how Japan kind of fought their problem, so that we can have a primary understanding of how we can at least have a chance of fighting our problems. First problem is first solution that they proposed was monetary policy. What they did was, the bank said we won't charge any interest, there will be zero interest rate, and they implemented it whole out the country. Then they implemented quantitative easing. What does that mean? They purchased long-term government bonds and other assets. The government purchased it, so that people who had those kind of bonds with them have a liquid asset like cash money, so that they can face their difficulties. And these two had their own challenges. Like, Japan entered a liquidity trap. Okay, when you have zero rate, in case of banks, when they give you zero rates, the public might have weak confidence in banks, like, why should we put money in your bank, or things like that. Okay, and this kind sometimes pushes the people to keep their money elsewhere, where they can be promised higher interest rates, but eventually most of those are scams. So these kind of vulnerabilities were exploited by certain groups. And one thing we have to understand is that our mentality is much more dark than them. So we will have to implement policies that have very low sinkholes, and we have to ensure that the vulnerables are prioritized. And also, one thing is mostly sure is that when we will transition from that unautomated world to an automated world, we will see that there will be companies who will make billions of dollars in 1 or 2 nights or 1 or 2 months. So the the government has to ensure that there are policies which can tackle those challenges, that the companies that are making billions or trillions of dollars worth of money, they can give back to the society, give back to the government, so that those money can be, cycled around, so the vulnerable groups are supported. We can't, we can't have these kind of loopholes here in our country. Then what happened? Deflation persisted, increasing the real burden of debt and undermining monetary stimulus. Okay, what happened here is that the deflation did not stop after, these kind of policies were implemented. So one thing we should learn from them is that we should first understand what policies we are implementing and what are the results, the rigid results that we want. After that, what they did was they implemented some fiscal policies. What they tried to do was revive the economy by injecting cash into the economy. So what they did, they implemented multiple fiscal stimulus packages totaling approximately $100 trillion. Okay, 100 trillion yuan, which is 1 trillion USD, throughout the 1990s. Like almost a decade, they tried to inject liquid cash into the economy through infrastructure projects like highways, bridges, rural public works, these kind of things. And it did not work because the fiscal multiplier fell sharply from 2.5 to 1. Okay, like it fell almost to more lesser than half. Okay, what is the fiscal multiplier? The fiscal multiplier is that, like how much your economy is growing. Investments were disproportionately allocated to rural or agricultural areas with lower economic impact. Now what they did not understand is that the policies they are implementing, those policies need to have an economic impact. Okay, and the imagine this. Okay, two people are hungry, one person is hungry for 2 days, another person is hungry for 7 days. You have a, like a piece of bread. If you give the 7 days hungry person, he will have more impact. The bread will have more impact on him rather than the 2 days hungry person. So what Japan could not understand, or the policymakers could not understand, is identifying who is hungry for how many days or weeks. So they implemented the policy, they made highways, they made bridges, but it was not on the proper places that needed those assets more than others. Okay, and then the public debt surged to over 140% of GDP by 2001. What happened here is that they were, like costing the economy when injecting the money. Like they were costing the government to inject money into their economy. So what happened was that the whole equation did not match, and they, like the whole investment that they were doing kind of backfired, and it became a liability and not an asset. And after that, they had some financial sector reforms. What they tried to do was address the banking crisis. So the measurements we can see here, the blanket deposit guarantee. The government tried to say that yes, we will protect all your deposits and please don't, take your money out of the bank. But previously we understood why they were motivated to pull their money away, because there were other groups who could exploit that vulnerability. Then financial revitalization program. What this did, injected public capital, the taxpayers' money, into weak banks, established resolution and collection corporation to absorb bad loans. Okay, there were some loans that were bad loans, that were default loans. They tried to reimburse it with public taxpayers' money. Then prompt corrective action. framework to force undercapitalized banks to restructure or exit. There were banks that were unsustainable. So what the government did, they tried to restructure it, or tried to motivate it, or implement action so that it could exit without causing chaos. After that, we have special bank inceptions, which enhance scrutiny of loan classification practices. Okay, these kind of implementations were done. Now, after analyzing the whole three of these policies, one thing is that they were not 100% effective. Okay, there were times they failed, but what this did was at least support some of the populace so that the economy could again stabilize. Okay, now in our case, when our country, or when our economy will start to drift from unautomated to automated economy, what we need to do is we need to support the ones who are in a vulnerable position throughout the economic transition. There can be training programs that can help the transition by transforming one group of assets or one group of working class to, let's say, to transform them into another group of working class. Like, imagine the people who used to, let's say, make industrial products, like imagine the workers in FedEx or Amazon, how they used to categorize their packages so that every package was in the certain place. Imagine in our case we transformed that group of people into, let's say, making basic automation programs. I mean, it's an example, but imagine that can have a potential. You won't have 100% success rate. Like, imagine there are 30 people whom you want to transform. Maybe 30 will not transform or will not adapt to that situation, but even if 5 or 10 transforms or at least adapts to that, it's a win. Like there where you had to transform 30 people and you could transform 5 or 10. Try to then we can try to transform the 20, or get them to work in another field. Or when we will face that situation, we might have other solutions, but it's just an example. We will have to have some policies that have some preparation time or a transition period for the economy to get out of the stagnation, and to ensure that there are not many people who will die of starvation in a developing country. Okay, so that was kind of it for this video. I don't know how good it was or how bad it was. Please comment on this video so that I have an understanding of what the quality is, or just leave your perspective here as well. What you think of the video, or what do you think about my perspective? It's been a while that I haven't recorded any videos, and maybe give your support or your criticism, constructive criticism on this video, and let's see if I continue this series or not. I'm not sure here, but let's try.